Ah, here's the boy back again. See how he holds his injury, Master Whiston? We must take him also to see Father Jonas. Whiston seemed not to hear this. Leaving the wall, he went down the little steps to meet Edwin, and for a few moments the two conferred in low voices, heads close together. The boy's manner was animated, and the warrior listened with a frown, nodding occasionally. As Axel came down the steps to their level, Whiston said quietly, Master Edwin reports a curious discovery. We may do well to see with our own eyes. Let's follow him, but walk as we've no clear purpose, in case that old monk there is left on purpose to spy on us. Indeed, a solitary monk was sweeping the courtyard as they came closer. Axel noticed he was mouthing words silently to himself, lost in his own world. He barely glanced their way as Edwin led them across the courtyard and into a gap between two buildings. They emerged where thin grass covered uneven sloping ground, and a row of withered trees hardly taller than a man marked a path leading away from the monastery. As they followed Edwin under a setting sky, Whiston said softly, I'm much taken by this boy, Master Axel. We may yet revise our plan to leave him at your son's village. It would suit me well to keep him by me a while longer. I'm troubled to hear you say so, sir. Why so? He hardly longs for a life feeding pigs and digging the cold soil. Yet what will become of him at your side? Once my mission's complete, I'll take him back to the Fens. And what will you have him do there, sir? Fight sea raiders all his days? You frown, sir, but the boy has an unusual temperament. He'll make a fine warrior. But hush, let's see where he has it for us. They had come to where the 3 wooden shacks stood at the side of the lane, in such disrepair that each appeared to be held up by its neighbor. The wet ground was rutted with wheel tracks, and Edwin paused to point these out. Then he led them into the furthest of the 3 shacks. There was no door, and much of the roof was open to the sky. As they came in, several birds flew off in furious commotion, and Axel saw, in the gloomy space vacated, a crudely made cart, perhaps the work of the monks themselves, its 2 wheels sunk into the mud. What arrested the attention was a large cage mounted on its carriage, and coming closer, Axel noticed that though the cage was itself iron, a thick wooden pillar ran down its spine, fixing it firmly to the boards underneath. This same post was festooned with chains and manacles, and at head height what appeared to be a blackened iron mask, though with no holes for the eyes and only a small one for the mouth. The cart and the area all around it was covered with feathers and droppings. Edwin pulled open the cage door and proceeded to move it back and forth on its squeaking hinge. He was again speaking excited words, to which Whiston, throwing searching glances around the shed, returned the occasional nod. It's curious, Axel said. These monks should have need of such an object as this, no doubt to aid some pious ritual. The warrior started to move around the cart, stepping carefully to avoid the stagnant puddles. I saw something like this once before, he said. You may suppose this device intended to expose the man within it to the cruelty of the elements. Yet look, see how these bars stand far enough apart to allow my shoulder to pass through? And here, look, how these feathers stick to the iron and harden blood. A man fastened here is offered thus to the mountain birds. Caught in these cuffs, he has no way to fight off the hungry beaks. This iron mask, though it may look frightful, is in fact a thing of mercy, for with it the eyes, at least, aren't feasted on. There may yet be some more gentle purpose, Axel said, but Edwin had started to talk again, and Whiston turned and looked out of the shed. The boy says he followed these tracks out to a spot nearby on the cliff's edge, the warrior said eventually. He says the ground's well rutted there, showing where the wagon has often stayed. In other words, the signs all support my guess, and I can see, too, this cart's been wheeled out just lately. I don't know what it means, Master Whiston, but admit I now begin to share your uneasiness. This object sends a chill through me and makes me want to return to my wife's side. It's as well we do, sir. Let's stay no longer. But as they came out of the shack, Edwin, who again was leading, stopped abruptly. Looking past him into the evening gloom, Axel could see a robed figure in the tall grass a short distance from them. I'd say it's the monk lately sweeping the yard, the warrior said to Axel. Does he see us? I'd say he sees us and knows we see him, yet he stands there still as a tree. Well, let's go to him. The monk was standing at a spot to the side of their path, the grass up to his knees. As they approached, the man remained quite still, though the wind pulled at his robe and long white hair. He was thin, almost emaciated, and his protruding eyes stared at them without expression. "You observe us, sir," Whiston said, stopping, "and you know what we've just discovered. So perhaps you tell us the purpose to which you monks put that device." Saying nothing, the monk pointed toward the monastery. "It may be he's vowed to silence," Axel said, "or else as mute as you lately pretended, Master Whiston." The monk came out of the grass and onto the path. His strange eyes fixed each of them in turn, and he pointed again towards the monastery and set off. They followed him just a short distance behind, the monk continually glancing back at them over his shoulder. The monastery's buildings were now dark shapes against the setting sky. As they drew closer, the monk paused, moved his forefinger over his lips, then continued at the more cautious pace. He seemed anxious they remain unseen, and to avoid the central courtyard. He took them down narrow passageways behind buildings where the earth was pitted or sloped severely. Once, as they went with heads bowed along a wall, there came from a very window above the sounds from a monk's conference. One voice was shouting over a hubbub, then a second voice, perhaps that of the abbot, called for order. But there was no time to loiter, and soon they were gathered at an archway through which could be seen the main courtyard. The monk now indicated with urgent signs that they were to proceed as quickly and quietly as possible. As it was, they were not obliged to cross the courtyard, where the torches were now burning, but only to skirt one corner under the shadows of a colonnade. When the monk halted again, Axel whispered to him, "Good sir, since your intentions must be to take us somewhere, I'd ask you to let me go fetch my wife, for I'm uneasy leaving her alone." The monk, who had turned immediately to fix Axel in a stare, shook his head and pointed into the semi-dark. Only then did Axel spot Beatrice standing in a doorway further down the cloister. Relieved, he gave a wave, and as the party moved towards her, there came from behind them a surge of angry voices from the monk's meeting. "How is it with you, princess?" he asked, reaching to take her outstretched hands. "Peacefully taking my rest, Axel. When this silent monk appeared before me, the way I took him for a phantom. But he's keen to lead us somewhere, and we'd best follow." The monk repeated his gesture for silence, then beckoning, pushed Beatrice across the threshold where she had been waiting. The corridors now became as tunnel-like as those that they're worn at home, and the lamps flickering in the little alcoves hardly dispelled the darkness. Axel and Beatrice, holding his arm, kept a hand held out before him. For a moment they were back in the open air, crossing a muddy yard being between ploughed allotments, then into another low stone building. Here the corridor was wider and lit by larger flames, and the monk seemed finally to relax. Recovering his breath, he looked them over once more, then signaling for them to wait, vanished under an arch. After a little time, the monk appeared again and ushered them forward. As he did so, a frail voice from within said, "Come in, guests. A poor chamber this is to receive you, but you're welcome." As he waited for sleep to come to him, Axel recalled once again how the four of them, together with the silent monk, had squeezed into the tiny cell. A candle was burning next to the bed, and he had felt Beatrice recoil as she caught sight of the figure lying in it. Then she had taken a breath and moved further into the room. There was hardly space for them all, but they had before them long arranged themselves around the bed, the warrior and the boy in the corner furthest away. Axel's back was pressed against the chilly stone wall, but Beatrice, standing just in front and leaning into him as if for reassurance, was almost up to the sick bed. There was a faint smell of vomit and urine. The silent monk, meanwhile, was fussing about the man in the bed, helping to raise him to a sitting position. Their host was white-haired and advanced in years. His frame was large, and until recently he must have been vigorous, but now the simple act of sitting up appeared to cause multiple agonies. A coarse blanket fell from around him as he raised himself, revealing a nightshirt patched with bloodstains. But what had caused Beatrice to shrink back was the man's neck and face, starkly illuminated by the bedside candle. A swollen mound under one side of the chin, a deep purple fading to a yellow, obliged the head to be held at a slight angle. The peak of the mound was split and caked with pus and old blood. On the face itself, a gouge ran from just below the cheekbone down to the jaw, exposing a section of the man's inner mouth and gum. It must have cost him greatly to smile, but once he was settled in his new position, the monk did just this. "Welcome, welcome. I'm Jonas, whom I know you came a long way to see. My dear guest, don't look at me with such pity. These wounds are no longer new, and hardly bring the pain they once did." "We see now, Father Jonas," Beatrice said, "why your good abbot was so reluctant to have strangers impose on you. We've had waited for his permission, but this kind monk led us to you. Ninian here is my most trusted friend, and even if he's vowed to silence, we understand one another perfectly. He's watched each of you since your arrival and brought me frequent reports. I thought it time we met, even if the abbot knows nothing of it." "But what can have caused you such injuries, Father?" Beatrice asked, "and you a man of famed kindness and wisdom." "Let's leave the topic, mistress, for my feeble strength will not allow us to speak for long. I know two of you here, yourself and this brave boy, seek my advice. Let me see the boy first, who I understand carries a wound. Come closer into the light, dear lad." The monk's voice, though soft, possessed a natural command, and Edwin started to move towards him, but immediately Wystan reached forward and gripped the boy by the arm. Perhaps it was the effect of the candle flame or the warrior's trembling shadow cast on the wall behind him, but it seemed to Axel that for an instant Wystan's eyes were fixed on the injured monk with peculiar intensity, even hatred. The warrior drew the boy back to the wall, then took a step forward himself, as though to shield his charge. "What's wrong, shepherd?" asked Father Jonas. "Do you fear poison from my wounds will travel to your brother? Then my hand needn't touch him. Let him step closer, and my eyes alone will test his injury." "The boy's wound is clean," Wystan said. "It's just this good woman now seeks your help." "Master Wystan," Beatrice said, "how can you say such a thing? You must know well how a wound clean one moment turns fevered the next. The boy must seek this monk's guidance." Wystan seemed not to hear Beatrice and continued to stare at the monk. Father Jonas, in turn, regarded the warrior as though he were a thing of great fascination. After a while, Father Jonas said, "You stand with remarkable boldness for a humble shepherd. It must be the habit of my trade. A shepherd must stand long hours watchful of wolves gathering in the night." "No doubt that's so. I imagine, too, how a shepherd must judge quickly, hearing a sound in the dark, if a heralds danger or approach of a friend. Much must rest on the ability to make such decisions quickly and well. Only a foolish shepherd hears a snapping twig, or spots a shape in the dark and assumes a companion come to relieve him. We're a cautious breed, and what's more, sir, I've just now seen with my own eyes the device in your barn." "Ah, I thought you'd come upon it sooner or later. What do you make of your discovery, shepherd?" "It angers me." "Angers you?" Father Jonas rasped, with this some force, as though himself suddenly angered. "Why does it anger you?" "Tell me if I'm wrong, sir. My surmise is that the custom here has been for the monks to take turns in that cage, exposing their bodies to the wild birds, hoping this way to atone for crimes once committed in this country and long unpunished. Even these ugly wounds I see here before me have been gained in this way, and for all I know a sense of piety eases your suffering. Yet let me say I feel no pity to see your gashes. How can you describe as penance, sir, the drawing of a veil over the foulest of deeds? Is your Christian God one to be bribed so easily with self-inflicted pain and a few prayers? Does he care so little for justice left undone? Our God is a God of mercy, shepherd, whom you, a pagan, may find hard to comprehend. It's no foolishness to seek forgiveness from such a God, however great the crime. Our God's mercy is boundless. What use is a God with boundless mercy, sir? You mock me as a pagan, yet the gods of my ancestors pronounce clearly their ways and punish severely when we break their laws. Your Christian God of mercy gives me license to pursue their greed, their lust for land and blood, knowing a few prayers and a little penance will bring forgiveness and blessing. It's true, shepherd, that here in this monastery there are those who still believe in such things. But let me assure you, Ninian and I have long ago let such delusions go, and neither are we alone. We know our God's mercy is not to be abused, yet many of my brother monks, and the abbot included, will not yet accept this. They still believe that cage and our constant prayers will be enough. Yet these dark crows and ravens are a sign of God's anger. They never came before. Even last winter, though the wind made the strongest of us weep, the birds were but mischievous children, their beaks bringing only small sufferings. A shake of the chains or a shout was enough to keep them at bay. But now a new breed comes to find us, larger, bolder, and with fury in their eyes. They tear at us in the calm anger, no matter how we struggle or cry out. We've lost 3 dear friends in these past months, and many more of us carry deep wounds. These surely are signs. Whiston's manner had been softening, but he had kept himself firmly in front of the boy. "Are you saying," he asked, "I have friends here in this monastery?" "In this room, shepherd, yes. Elsewhere we remain divided. Even now they argue in great passion about how we are to continue. The abbot will insist we carry on as always. Others of our view will say it's time to stop. That no forgiveness awaits us at the end of this path. That we must uncover what's been hidden and face the past. But those voices, I fear, remain few and will not carry the day. Shepherd, will you trust me to see this boy's wound?"